Welcome to School for Relationships. We've talked in depth about what enmeshment is, where it comes from, and now we are finally here to talk about how to heal from it. So, as we've discussed, we enmesh with others because of blurry boundaries that make it hard for us to stay in touch with our needs and feelings when we're around other people. So, our main focus here in healing is building firmer boundaries so that we can stay in touch with who we are and what matters the most to us in our relationships. And there are two main types of boundaries: external and internal boundaries. Most people think of external boundaries right off the bat. They think boundaries are putting our foot down, stating our limits out loud to other people. And external boundaries are a helpful place to start if you are just learning how to set boundaries, but they can be superficial and flimsy if we don't have internal boundaries to back them. You can think of the difference between internal and external boundaries as the difference between walking the walk or just talking the talk. And people can usually tell if our words don't align with our actions, and they may push back on external boundaries that we're setting that don't have those stronger internal boundaries to back them. And this pushback of our boundaries isn't always out of maliciousness. Very often it is just coming from that person's own conditioning to fuse and enmesh with others. So the most important type of boundary for really healing from enmeshment at its roots is internal unstated boundaries. And self-worth is the strongest boundary that we can build. When we're in touch with our self-worth, all other boundaries follow. This is not a boundary that we need to express or explain out loud. You communicate self-worth through how you treat yourself. And one of the main ways we communicate that we respect ourselves and we respect our own worth is by respecting our needs and feelings as valid and important and standing up for them. This also protects us from not letting other people's feelings towards us determine our own sense of value. So if you are just starting your healing journey and you are struggling still with low self-worth, that is totally okay, and you can start exactly where you are, because boundaries both reflect self-worth, but they also build it. So if you want to focus first on setting external boundaries, stating your needs out loud to others first, you're still acting in a way that honors your needs and feelings as valid and important, even if you don't believe this quite yet. But by paying attention to how you feel and what you need, you're acting in a way that matches and honors your current energy levels and is giving you more space to rest, restore, and take care of yourself. And my bet and what the research shows us is that you will like the version of yourself that you've been proactively taking care of a lot more than the version whose needs were being neglected. So wherever you're at, whether you're starting with stating boundaries out loud to others or you're ready for that deeper internal work, our main goal and what I want us to keep focused on is continuing to build up the strength of our internal boundaries and self-worth. Over time, this also makes external boundaries feel easier and take a lot less energy. So if you are trying to do kind of an internal check on how strong are my internal boundaries, I have 3 questions that I come back to all the time to check this for myself. Question number 1, how much are the feelings of the people around me determining my own feelings and decisions? Question number 2, how much of the way that I present myself comes from a fear of how others will react or judge me? And 3, how much of my sense of feeling good enough depends on other people's validation? If any of these questions ring really true for you, these are areas that can benefit from more of your attention and support so that you can deepen your healing process. The answer to these questions will also change over time. Self-worth is not something fixed, but we continue to build it and life will continue to test it. As you're growing into your self-worth, you're going to take bigger risks, and you will face new and unprecedented challenges that push you and challenge your self-worth in whole new ways. A personal example for me is actually starting this YouTube podcast, which has been very vulnerable. I am usually a very private person, and so this has really challenged again and brought up all these old fears of how other people will perceive me. And it's been a big stretch, becoming more comfortable with sharing myself and my ideas on a more public stage. So this is another one of those tests for my self-worth and my internal boundaries, and it's hard, but ultimately I'm really grateful to have this chance to keep growing into my own self-worth. So wherever you are at in building and strengthening your self-worth, I created this video to share some of the main strategies that I always come back to for how to build stronger internal boundaries. These are strategies focused around how you can get to know and then respect your own needs and feelings. I've identified these through some of my own personal experience, but also through a lot of work and research. And as you look at these strategies, what I would say is I offer these more as a guiding compass than as a detailed roadmap with instructions. In moments of self-doubt, I hope these strategies are something that can give you a source of support and optimism to keep moving bravely forward in your path of individuation. But your journey of individuating is a road that has never been traveled down and that only you can travel. So take these strategies and what resonates and clicks with you and keep coming back to them whenever you need them the most. So I've broken down 4 main strategies that I will be sharing with you all today. These strategies have so much information and substance packed within each of them, so we'll be talking about them more in depth, but I'm going to go through them just to begin. We've got number 1, take back your attention. Number 2, stay with how you feel. Number 3, look for the needs behind your feelings. And 4, find many ways of meeting your needs. So that's where we're going today. Let's start with number 1, take back your attention. If you had to pick one strategy to remember, this is the one. Because when we're giving away our attention all the time to what other people are thinking and feeling, this is a form of self-abandonment. Within every conversation, there should be more than enough room for everyone's feelings to be present. That conversation may not focus on you and your feelings, but you should have enough space to feel them still. And if you are still learning how to stay in touch with and hold that space for your feelings, it can be very helpful to prioritize being around other people who also care about holding space for your feelings. So even as you seek out those relationships and people that help you stay in touch with how you feel, ultimately it is still your responsibility to notice and manage your own emotional experience. And this is tough because we live in a time where there are countless ways to numb out, escape, avoid, ignore, and repress our needs and feelings. And without trying very hard, we can just move from one distraction to the next until years of our life have slipped us by. Now, I'm not saying you need to make a 180-degree change from constant escapism to being constantly mindful of your feelings. Treat taking back your attention as a practice. Practice noticing when you have left yourself and turning your attention back to your own body and feelings when this happens. What you're really practicing is seeing and being with yourself no matter what you're feeling. Because until we learn not to abandon or betray our own needs and feelings, we often end up in relationships that serve as mirrors with other people who treat us similarly to how we're treating ourselves. So this step, taking back our attention, it is a simple step, but it is made hard by the ways that our culture, again, normalizes and reinforces blurry emotional boundaries and self-abandonment. And I want to give an example from mainstream culture, which is the "he's just not that into you" dating philosophy. This philosophy around dating can be helpful if you are just getting started setting boundaries in your relationships, but the boundaries that this encourages are external and actually run counter to developing stronger internal boundaries. This entire philosophy reinforces paying more attention to what the other person feels and wants than what you want. And this is a guide to dating that's encouraging women in particular to focus more of their attention on monitoring and guessing how the man feels, how interested he seems, and how strong his desire is. What about the woman's desire? So whenever I hear conversations that are focused around this, by now kind of everyone's using this philosophy. So I'll hear people talking about, some form of guessing how interested the other person is in us. I always start with the question, how into the other person are you? And I find that the answer is usually some form of ambivalence. We're not necessarily actually into the other person, who we may barely even know, but in trying to get that other person to be interested in us. We're either chasing them or trying to make them chase us, and whatever side of the chase we end up on, what both people are chasing is someone else to confirm that they are special and worthy of being loved. Even though on the surface our attention is focused on that other person, and we may feel hypersensitive to their emotions and moods, if this hypersensitivity is driven by this hungry ghost within us that's chasing after their external validation, we often end up taking that other person's emotions personally and making their feelings about us. If you notice this happening, this is just an invitation to practice taking back your attention again. Whether you're dating or making new friends, notice how you feel when you're around this person, how your body responds to them, and how your energy levels feel after you spend time with them. Seeing yourself allows you to more clearly see the other person and actually get to know them faster. It also helps you more authentically represent yourself so that that person can see you more clearly. So taking back our attention is this first step that helps us build relationships where we can see the other person and truly feel seen by them in return. Then we'll go to our second strategy here, which is stay with how you feel. When we are first tuning back into how we feel, our emotions may feel bigger than we are and easily overwhelm or confuse us. These are feelings that have been trying to get our attention for years, so they may completely flood us when we're finally paying attention to them again. And in EMDR and trauma therapy, one of the things we're mindful of and track across sessions is something called a window of tolerance. And our window of tolerance is how much emotion we can stay with before we feel overwhelmed, shut down, and dissociate, or lose control of our emotions. And wherever your window of tolerance is at, the most important thing is to respect this. Respect this by staying with how you feel in manageable doses. Start just by finding times and spaces in your day where you can consciously choose to pause and be with how you feel. And at first, it might be helpful to do this, just once a week with your therapist or with the support of a friend or family member, especially if you're still building up those skills for how to tolerate emotions that you've been avoiding for a long time. Many of us have spent years running away from feeling any form of pain, loneliness, or emptiness. And for others of us, we actually may struggle with the pleasurable emotions. We may not have learned that it's safe to feel joy and pleasure, so feeling positive can trigger this sense of hypervigilance and even dread as we're waiting for that next bad thing to come. Whatever emotions that we're struggling with represent parts of ourselves and our experience that were never validated, that didn't feel safe, or that we were taught to reject. Learning how to hold space for all of our emotions is a way we can learn how to hold space for all parts of ourselves. And this is a gradual process that you should approach each day based on how much energy you have to give to this. Consciously choosing distraction when you are at your max emotional capacity for a day is a form of self-care. It's very different than constantly chasing distraction throughout your entire day. So what will happen as you do this practice of staying with your feelings is that your window of tolerance will grow. And this happens as your sense of self grows and you prove to yourself that you are bigger and stronger than your emotions. This simple practice of staying with your emotions in manageable doses rewires your brain and nervous system and how you respond to stress. This is a form of deep somatic healing and memory reconsolidation. Because when we first open ourselves up to feeling the full spectrum of our emotions, many of us hold this unconscious belief or fear that I can't handle this. We're afraid we can't handle our emotions because we've been taught to avoid them, and we fear what we don't know. We fear the emotions we haven't been taught how to handle, and that we were never told we're valid or okay to feel. So the way that we challenge these old unconscious fears is by testing them. Treat this as a true experiment and see, what happens if I stay with this feeling even just a little bit longer, without acting on the feeling, just staying with it, feeling it. And eventually our goal is to build up enough tolerance that we can ride out an entire wave of emotion without feeling a sense of threat or an urgent need to act on or change how we're feeling. DBT calls this process urge surfing. Just like a wave, our emotions will start off smaller and build until they peak at their maximum level of intensity. If we ride this emotion out until it naturally reaches its peak, we then get to experience that emotion slowly start to taper off on the other side. And that tapering off usually comes with a lot of catharsis and relief. Our body gets to release all this tension it was holding on to. We mentally feel clearer, more present, and more trusting of ourselves. We're building this self-trust because we're proving to ourselves that we can safely stay with and feel any emotion. Over time, this is reinforcing a new and more empowering unconscious belief that this feeling is temporary and I can handle this. And what do we do with these feelings that we're staying with? That gets us to strategy 3, look for the needs behind your feelings. By staying with your emotions and practicing non-judgment, you are allowing your feelings to be what they are. I encourage my clients to treat your feelings as facts. This does not mean that the internal perceptions or thoughts that prompted your feelings are always true or accurate. But by the time an emotional response has come up within you, that emotion is there, it is real, it is what it is. How you manage that emotion is your choice, but there is nothing wrong and nothing you can change about your original emotional response. Noticing our emotions, again without attempting to change or avoid them, is how we begin to treat our emotions as valid. And once again, valid does not mean that the perception behind that emotion is always accurate. It just means we are treating our emotions and honoring them for what they are. Messengers that are here to inform and protect us. An initial emotional response is often the messenger for a deeper emotion, which is then often the messenger for a deeper need and a signal of whether this need is being met or not. I want to try to take this process and make it concrete with a specific example. Let's say we're feeling lonely on a given day and we're trying to identify what is the need coming up for me here. Let's start with that original feeling, the loneliness, because we can feel lonely for a lot of different reasons. We can feel sad lonely, mad lonely, bored lonely, afraid lonely. So Let's say on this day, as you're sitting with feeling that loneliness, you also notice that you're feeling some kind of jittery, a little bit restless. It's hard for you to sit still or focus. And you're recognizing, okay, this restlessness is coming from a place of avoidance. And when you sit with that avoidance, you see it connects back to anxiety. And this is anxiety over a decision that you have to make and that you're feeling really uncertain about. So by going through this process of peeling back the layers of your emotion and getting to this core emotion of anxiety, that's how you can most clearly see what core need is driving your feelings. If you hadn't dug any deeper than feeling lonely, you might have stopped right there and thought that your main need was for connection. And that wouldn't have really done it in terms of fulfilling what you were looking for here. By peeling back those layers, what you're able to see is that what you're really needing is space and support to try to make this decision and meet your ultimate need for clarity. So the most helpful thing that we can do to get an accurate sense of our needs is to dig deeper into the root of what we're feeling and what prompted this feeling. And if you are still having a hard time identifying what needs are driving your feelings, just remember that it's okay to guess your needs wrong at first, and it's also okay for your needs to change. This process isn't about knowing yourself perfectly or guessing your needs right every time. That is impossible because you and your needs will continue to change on a daily basis. So more than anything, what we're here to do and what this process requires is just a willingness to keep getting to know yourself. And as you're getting to know yourself and some of your main needs, that brings us to our last strategy. Number 4, find many ways of meeting your needs. According to Marshall Rosenberg, who created nonviolent communication, or you might hear me say NVC, our needs are abstract, positive, and universal. Abstract means that we're not dependent on any one person, place, or thing to meet a need, and that there are many possible ways we can meet any given need. Positive means when we're expressing a need, we're asking for what we would like to happen rather than focusing on what we don't want or what's wrong. And finally, universal means that we all share the same core needs to different degrees, which can be helpful to remember to reduce a sense that there's anything wrong with what you need and to let go of some of that guilt or shame around that. But in particular, what we're going to focus on in this video is recognizing our needs as abstract and not dependent on any one thing or person. Because when we really understand this, this can create this tremendous sense of inner freedom and relief. Oftentimes in mainstream culture and social media, when we hear people talking about needs and boundaries, a lot of the way people are expressing their boundaries is through making demands. Demands often involve someone else needing to stop doing something or to do something differently in order for us to feel like our needs are being respected. NVC treats any expression of our needs as a mutual and open dialogue. And this doesn't mean that we can't express needs and boundaries that are non-negotiable. Setting firm boundaries becomes especially important when we're in relationships with other people who violate our boundaries and who haven't shown us that they're capable of holding space for other people's needs and emotions. But when we're in relationship with people who respect our needs and feelings, we get to open this conversation up to be a creative and exploratory process. What we're looking for are solutions that meet everyone's most important needs and leave everyone feeling cared for. And we can find these creative solutions by looking for multiple sources and ways to meet our needs, which is removing a lot of pressure, again, from any one person or thing needing to fulfill them. This is one of the greatest ways that we can take care of ourselves and the health of our relationships, is building a support network of different people, things, and places that meet our core needs. Just remember, as humans, we are built to thrive in communities and groups, And one of the things I like to say is that we each contain within us an entire world. And different relationships and spaces will allow us to explore and express different aspects of our inner world. And if we're reducing our sense of self to one main thing or relationship that gives us a sense of value or meaning, that's creating a relationship of dependence. So if you notice yourself hyper-focusing on one thing or person to make you feel better or more fulfilled, this is a flag to let you know that you're fusing your sense of worth and identity with that thing. If you notice this happening, you can take care of yourself and shift and heal that pattern of enmeshment by looking for other ways to fulfill your needs. Let's go back to our example of feeling lonely, which you realize was actually coming from a place of anxiety because of this decision you're struggling to make. And let's say that decision has to do with a next step you're considering taking in your career. If you only have one person that you usually go to for advice to talk through this kind of important decision, and they're unavailable, you may feel even more lonely and maybe abandoned and resentful. And you might even jump to conclusions and think that this person is no longer meeting your needs. You don't know if you can trust them as much or if they're reliable. But if you can practice taking responsibility for your own needs and looking for other ways to meet your need for support and clarity, a lot of these painful feelings may lessen or can even disappear. So you can try instead reaching out to other people, even if this initially falls outside of your comfort zone, and it might feel awkward at first if you haven't approached other friends for this type of support before, but you might also gain a lot from seeking out these different perspectives and building deeper intimacy with other people in your friend circle. When you do this, your original friend being unavailable no longer feels personal, and you can see and respect whatever need they had going on for time, space, rest. So by building this larger web of support, meeting our needs in relationships no longer has to feel like this either-or decision, and we can find those creative solutions that don't have to feel as much like compromise. So that is where we will be ending our strategies for how to heal from enmeshment. I'm going to have a second video coming up on how building firmer boundaries can change the way we feel in relationships and offer some strategies to help you navigate the ways that your relationships may change. So we've got some more good stuff coming. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And please like this video, comment and let me know what was the strategy that felt the most helpful for you. Can't wait to hear from you and see you in the next video.